we weren't logging it. So if no one was logging it on our behalf, it means that all the artists we were playing weren't getting their royalties from being played on the radio.
How many massive brawls have occurred at, Anzac Day footy clashes, and they haven't been like, okay, let's ban the footy, because obviously there is a greater cultural significance of the game and there's other ways to deal with violence in sport that don't involve banning it entirely.
I don't necessarily disagree with him, and I don't think that, making changes is a bad thing necessarily either, because, I think a lot of what the day is about has been lost.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
Okay, I'm recording.
I've literally just hit start as well. So hopefully the audio tracks will be nice and synced, and that makes it a little bit easier for editing purposes.
I think it will. I've got a multi-track as well this time.
Oh, look at you go.
Last time.
Look at you learning.
I know.
Not that anyone would have picked up on that from the last music news recording. Or maybe they did. The last 5 minutes, if you go back, Eamonn's probably a little bit more compressed and not as nice sounding because we used the recording from Google Meet as opposed to him recording straight to his end, because
I stuffed up.
We had all technical issues, which if you hung around till after the outro, you would have heard us having a little whinge about it. But anyway, we got a bit to talk about tonight. We might even talk about Tenacious D, maybe, if we can if we can talk about it. But a few things to talk about. Firstly, I just want to remind everyone it's tax time. I went and saw my accountant today, which is also Eamonn's accountant.
Also named Cameron.
Saved me a decent amount of money. So I've never actually physically gone to an accountant before, so it was a learning experience for me. I thought I was okay at Microsoft Excel, but watching him work through spreadsheets and do his things, I was like, wow, this guy's a wizard.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And even if I did my tax return when I worked like one casual job, like, in uni or whatever. But there's so much you can claim and all that you don't know. So if you're still doing your own tax return, credit, and you might save a few, but you probably save more seeing an accountant.
Yeah, and they're worth money. And my tax got far more complicated this year because I've got my wage, I've got my sort of ABN income, and then now that I'm married, I need to talk about my spouse's income, and there's extra things on top of that. So it got quite confusing. So I thought I'd see an accountant. But just a quick little PSA at the start of this music news that it is tax time. If you haven't already, listen to June Rats, and they'll, that was a little fun one in our last Who's Who article, if you read that.
I liked that a lot. Absolutely. And Homebrewed in the last financial year made its first $1 million. So everything gets a lot more complicated for us now that we're a trading business of over $1 million. So thanks to you listening for funding us and our upcoming holiday to the Indo-Pacific. We're really looking forward to it.
Which is great because, as you know, podcasts are free to listen to. So you are somehow funding our entire project and operation.
You're doing it.
But
no ads either.
No. But I'll tell you what else where you don't hear ads. It's community radio. You hear sponsors, but not ads. I remember that being quite a clear distinction between the two things. So we're going to be talking a little bit about community radio, and we're also going to be talking about ANZAC Day and Chris Minns and some government plans around music and ANZAC Day and how we think it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah, just to peel back the curtain, Cam and I were discussing, what we would like to discuss ahead of turning on the mics, and we were going, okay, well, one story, the community radio, is it too industry specific? I don't know. And then we have this other ANZAC Day story, which everyone's going to have, be able to relate to and have an opinion on. We're catering for our audiences, baby. We came from community radio. We know artists, musicians listen to our podcast. So this first story is for you. And if you're not a musician or an artist or involved in the music industry and you're not even interested in it, maybe I'm confused as to why you're listening, but welcome. But I think it's still interesting. But the ANZAC stuff at the end, that's the little dessert. That's your key lime pie. That's your cheesecake waiting. So just bear with us through this bit. Know that some of your peers and your contemporaries who this does relate to are interested, and we'll have some ANZAC Day furore for you coming up a little bit later on.
You really got me with the cheesecake. That's or a chocolate Bavarian or a sticky date pudding or something. But that's can you tell it's dessert time when we're recording this? But anyway, you've answered my question. I was going to say, which order do you want to do them in? But we've promised dessert. You can have your dessert first if you want, but traditionally it's eaten after everything else. So we'll start with the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia, or CBAA, in partnership with APRA AMCOS. They're rolling out a music recognition technology to 100 community radio stations to better ensure that Australian songwriters and music creators receive financial recognition. Now, this is something we never had to do when we were at Coast FM as part of the community radio, but I do remember at uni where they were part of the FBI radio as one of our
2SER we were at Macquarie.
Oh, it was. Wow. Yes.
And they would absolutely smite you down for saying the name of their biggest intercity rival.
Alumni no more. But I remember we were doing one of our radio units, and it was survey week or whatever, it was, and we had to write out any time we had a song in our radio feature that was being broadcast that week. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember having to fill out whatever songs I used. And that's a way that a lot of community radio stations fill out these surveys. It's a manually written thing. You're relying on people to go through either the archive and the online system, or to people to write down and say, hey, I've played this song on community radio, and then the royalties get split and sent off from there. But what the CBAA and APRA AMCOS are doing is it's going to be sort of a automated technology that's going to be recognizing what they call a digital fingerprint of a song, and it can identify that very quickly, and then it can send a report to the right people to make sure that more people get some financial recognition from the songwriters and music creators and everybody else. So I'm sort of picturing this a bit like Shazam.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I've only just kind of realised what we're talking about. Like I knew what we were talking about. But so I used to do a show on FBI radio in Sydney as well. For those listening who aren't aware, our show was it was news and current affairs, so it wasn't song heavy. We were journalism. However, there was this process that you had to do following each show where you'd have to go on the log and you'd have to log what was played. We logged our segments and the songs that were played. We had to list whether they were Australian and whether they were from Sydney as well, because it was to do with FBI's licensing. And I knew that those who did exclusively music shows would have, the presenter and the producer would be there with them, and the producer would be just logging every one of the dozens of songs that were played over the couple of hours at that time. And if you didn't do it, you were, there was a knock going, hey, you haven't logged your show for a couple of weeks. Like, we really need this. Can you do it, please? And now I'm realizing that this is all the same thing, this story that we're talking about. So if I'm to beam back into my time at FBI, what would make it a whole lot easier was not having to do that and having this MRT, music recognition technology, to actually identify the song would make things way easier.
Yeah, and, having to manually do it is what the vast majority of community radio stations have to do. But, 100 community radios.
Why did we never have to do it at Coast FM, I wonder?
I have no idea. My assumption is that they had someone doing that on our behalf. It wasn't down to the presenters to do it. I'm assuming, I don't know, what the station manager or the chairman or I feel like it would have been, someone else's job to be doing that. Maybe, because I know the station manager was putting in, all of the sponsors, not the ads, the sponsors and, the spot blocks and throwing in little things like that and all the automated hours that needed to be put in. Maybe as part of that they were doing it, or maybe they had a different, you know, because the technical guy at Coast FM was a whiz, maybe he came up with his own sort of automated way to put it on a spreadsheet, and then I don't know how it worked. But yeah, we never had to do it, which feels like maybe we should have.
Yeah, we got away with it. But shout outs to Trent, legend.
Yeah, so this is, you know, a pretty cool thing because, you know, we weren't logging it. So if no one was logging it on our behalf, it means that all the artists we were playing weren't getting their royalties from being played on the radio, because, you know, that's what this is all about in the end, to make sure that the right people are getting paid.
Yes, absolutely. Like, so, you know, if you are unaware, that every time a song is played on radio, whether it's commercial, public, community, whatever, the artist or the owner of the rights to that song is entitled to some form of remuneration.
Yes, it's a tricky word.
Oh, anyway. Now, I don't want to get too bogged down in that. It's the M and the N are in there. The order of them, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I thought it was, we're getting bogged down here. I thought it was remune, but then you said renew.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like number. And I was like, well, that makes sense.
I don't know. We'll have a look. We'll have a look.
Let me do a quick
and this is actually, you know, interestingly, you might have heard us speak in previous...
Remuneration.
Remune?
Remuneration. Remuneration. Money paid for work or a service is the definition.
It really should be like now new numeral. It should be the other way around.
That's what. Yeah, it made sense. But anyway,
we digress. So you might have heard us speak about, and we have covered the fair pay for radio play. God. Bill, which David Pocock introduced to Parliament. It was all about actually upping what the caps on those royalties were, so the maximum amount artists could receive, because they were set a long time ago, and of course inflation has done its thing. So we're talking about the same thing here in terms of what has to occur in order for artists to get the money. And I mean, as we have just demonstrated in describing our experience at Coast FM, we were not very diligent with logging, not that we were ever asked to. But if you can imagine across the many hundreds, if not thousands of community radio stations that exist across Australia, that would amount to quite a few plays for quite a few artists and quite a few dollars that are not actually making their way back to those artists purely because of a lack of record keeping.
Yeah, and I don't know what the legalities are around it, like what, obviously, I feel like you would be required to submit your logs through at a reasonable time frame, but I don't know actually, you know, if you don't do it, if there's any punishment, you know, to you as a station or not. But they're saying that the implementation of this music recognition technology will likely see an almost 9-fold increase in broadcast hours processed, which means station staff and volunteers don't need to do it manually anymore, which is fantastic. So you might be asking, how is this technology working? Is it AI in the background? They never actually said it is, but they're also not saying it isn't. You know, I'm not saying it's Batman, but, you know, I've never seen Eamonn and Batman in the same place at the same time. So
that's right.
Maybe. But so this MRT, as I'm going to refer to it now because it's much easier, music recognition technology, they say it's an audio matching process whereby audio fingerprints compared to a database of source recordings. APRA supplies promoters or event organisers with a device that connects to the mixing desk, picking up audio fingerprints from the songs played. That data is processed by DJ Monitor, who then provide a detailed report to APRA of song titles and artists played. And they're saying that, similar to, I guess, the way that we used the example before, but Shazam, they say audio fingerprint is a condensed digital summary of an audio signal used to quickly identify a song. So that's the way that it's working.
AI's definitely got to be involved in there somehow. They're just not using the acronym. I would think maybe it's bad press to use AI in the music realm at the moment, but I think that if it is, it's a good example of it being used in a way that is actually benefiting musicians, which we like to see. And
yes,
yeah, it ultimately will mean that volunteers don't have to do as much work, and that artists get paid fairly for the amount of times their music's played.
Yeah, because you'd imagine that there would be, if anything's done manually, there'd have to be something that slipped through the cracks, Whether it's just out of laziness, thinking, oh no, we played 30 seconds, I'm not going to put that song on, or whatever the case is, or whether it's just an honest mistake, a human error, it can happen. So you think less would slip through the cracks, which means artists should get paid a little bit more. It's not going to cost these stations anything. It's going to be free. And like I said, save them ninefold in their hours to process it all. The royalty payments to APRA are exactly the same as well. So it's not going to change anything there. But one thing I did find interesting in the second paragraph of this article, they say it's a timely and time-saving update for community broadcasters after last week's CrowdStrike outage dramatically affected commercial radio playout systems. But if there's an outage, wouldn't that mean that the automated technology wouldn't work effectively?
Unless it's in-house, like because they provide them with an actual device, I suppose it's not having to communicate.
That plugs into the desk.
That'd be my guess. But it's funny, that CrowdStrike thing. I mentioned it at the start of our most recent podcast with characters. Blamed Cam for it because he wasn't there at the interview.
Yes. Fair enough.
And I still think it might have been your fault, Cam. But as far as I'm concerned, nothing occurred. And I know they're saying it wipes like billions of dollars off of people's. But if you hadn't have told me that happened, I would not have known at all. And it had zero bearing on my day whatsoever.
The only thing that changed my life was I went to fill up at 7-Eleven and I couldn't because the pumps weren't working. But that was the only thing. Like, none of my banking went down. None of my, computer or emails or like any of the websites that I visited seemed to be affected by it. So, yeah, I personally didn't really have too much interfered with by the outage, but a lot of other people had a lot of problems. I saw at the F1, one of the teams, they were obviously using Windows, and Windows had a massive outage and huge problems with a lot of their software. And one of the F1 teams was sitting on the pit wall with the blue screens of death.
Oh, no.
And it's like, out of all the sports, F1 is so data driven and so heavily reliant on technology. It's quite funny.
Yeah, and I can, like, they look like stressful times at the best, stressful places at the best of times, the pit. So you can only imagine what a blue screen of death would do to that crew. They'd be running around like headless chooks.
Absolutely. Quick shout out to Oscar Piastri as well for winning his first F1 race over the last weekend as well. So go the Aussies. But unless you've got anything more on this, I've got a segue into the next story.
A seg away.
Speaking of sports and F1.
I see.
One of the favourite pastimes of people, at least in this state of New South Wales, is watching the Roosters and the Dragons play on ANZAC Day. It's a very traditional rivalry and a bit of a traditional clash on ANZAC Day, and you might not have even paused to think about how it came about or why are they playing on ANZAC Day, because of course it's a day to commemorate our war vets, and they're playing rugby league on that day. You might not have even thought about it. To be honest, I hadn't really considered it too much until a comparison we were discussing just before, because the Chris Minns government have made some changes.
Yeah. So Minzy and the team have come through a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if this occurred. I think it occurred just after we released the last music news, or at least that's the excuse we're going to be using, because it is a little bit old, but I think the discussion is still relevant.
I hadn't heard of it until you mentioned it just before, so it was news to me, and it could be news to our listeners.
That's right. And it's an interesting thing to consider too, because we often see the comparison, and we saw it a lot, particularly, we see it a lot actually, to be fair, generally when it comes to discussions of music in Australia and what that looks like. The comparison being music events are large scale with a lot of people that go to them, crowd driven. They engage a lot of people and a lot of people in one place at one time. So too does sport. And if you remember during the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of comparisons about, the allowances that were being given to sporting codes to continue operating, and the absolute lack of wiggle room that was given to any kind of music event to do the same. And this comparison has rolled on throughout many iterations of the debate. What we're talking about tonight is ANZAC Day in 2025 it'll be, and thereafter Chris Minns came out a couple of weeks back saying that he was really tightening up on what can and can't be done on ANZAC Day, or his government will be legally, because he felt that the day had kind of suffering from diminishing respect, I suppose, if I have to put words in his mouth. But that's reading between the that's just reading what he said and paraphrasing.
Yeah. And you know, I think I don't necessarily disagree with him, and I don't think that, you know, making changes is a bad thing necessarily either, because, you know, I think a lot of what the day is about has been lost, but some of the changes that he's made and some of the things that are allowed to continue are just a little bit puzzling.
Yes, so I'm with you. Like I do think that it's a day that we've definitely lost our feeling for its meaning, and I mean, you only have to look at the state of people coming out of pubs and clubs in the evening of Anzac Day to know that they're probably not there to remember the fallen soldiers. It's just for many people, it seems like it's an opportunity to drink 40 beers, get totally shit-faced, play two up, and quite often end up in a fight, which was a lot of what I saw growing up and have seen on Anzac Day. And I think generally we would benefit from pulling in a bit from all of that. And when I first saw this story, he was talking about Coles and Woolies and actually just stopping trading on this day. And I was like, you know, like, don't think trading's doing too, like, whatever, but I don't see it as too bad of a thing for us to have another day where the shops aren't open, because I think that's always good for us. But what also came out was that during this kind of announcement, he also mentioned that there would be a ban or a veiled threat to ban music festivals on Anzac Day and music events generally. So on 10th of July, Minns confirmed that tougher trading restrictions would apply to supermarkets and fashion retailers, and that would see them remain closed until midnight, raising the previous knockoff from 1 p.m. Minns also then implied that restrictions would extend to music festivals. And he said Anzac Day is a day for Australians to come together, and if it is in a social environment, at a pub, at a club, as long as it's part of an RSL club or a pub and is done with a view of commemorating that service, then we are not going to stand in the way of that. There is a distinction, and I think it's reasonable for the government to draw this distinction between a for-profit major rock concert in the Domain that has nothing really to do with Anzac Day, that hasn't been done in cooperation or consultation with the RSL.
So if an RSL club wanted to put on a gig, would that be allowed because it's in conjunction with the RSL club? Or is the argument that live music has nothing to do with Anzac Day and remembering the vets, and therefore it's no-go?
I guess, yeah. I guess if there wasn't an RSL, if it was a veterans band, obviously you're not going to prevent them from playing, or a veterans music event, and absolutely fair enough. But with this, I think he was referencing specifically to what went down with the Pandemonium Rocks controversy, which happened, which was scheduled for April 25 at the Domain. I think this festival was marred by a few dramas, and this was going to clash with an Anzac Day march at Hyde Park nearby. So you would have had kind of festival goers going to see bands walking past or through or amongst the Anzac Day march that was at Hyde Park, and it really pissed off veteran groups and Sydney Talkback Radio as well, media generally. The state government ended up stepping in and forcing the festival to relocate. Now, I can definitely understand you don't want revved up young people potentially drinking, going through it. That just doesn't sound like a good idea down an Anzac Day march. What's pissed people off through this is that, curiously, the NRL matches that occur on Anzac Day are totally unaffected by any of this. And I suppose people are again drawing this distinction. Okay, so what is the difference exactly? Both of these things are for-profit entities. Like the NRL is a for-profit organisation that pays people handsomely. So to a music festival, that they probably don't get paid quite as well, but they're all for-profit. People go to them for leisure and celebration. They usually involve drinking. You see that there's what we're getting at here. And there was basically nothing said about sport. And then he came out a couple of days later and was like, oh, look, that's occurred as a result of negotiations between RSL and NRL. And, it took a while to get it off the ground, etc. But again, people are kind of just looking at this, the Australian Festivals Association being one of them, and going, well, what's going on here? And the Australian Festivals Association, the AFA, did actually release a statement following this, calling it a total overreach and comparing it to sport, and also allowing people to go to the pub and pay tour. They said that music festivals contribute to culture and community, and they're committed to working with the government so that they can coexist respectfully alongside important commemorations.
Yeah, and I mean, the culture and community thing is something that I think is important, because when we talk about the NRL match, still taking place, I do feel like it is part of, Australian culture now, because that fixture has been going on for so long. It's almost expected that, well, it is expected because it's a fixture every single year, that no matter what day it falls on, there will be an ANZAC Day clash at the Sydney Football Stadium between the Roosters and the Dragons. And I don't know if it's been going on as long, but I know Melbourne, I think, always play the Warriors as well. So you've got New Zealand as part of ANZAC Day as well. That's something that I've noticed, at least over the last maybe 5 or so years. So it's part of the culture. But why can't we also implement music festivals or a music event into the culture of ANZAC Day as well? Because like you said, the similarities on paper are they're there. You got people wanting to be entertained. You've got people, for-profit entities, you've got crowds gathering and mingling and coming together over a culture. I mean, the only thing that's sort of uniquely different about the Anzac Day clash compared to any other NRL game is that they have a special jersey and they do the last post and the anthem before kickoff. Otherwise, it's just a game of NRL.
Yeah, and I also don't necessarily have a problem with them playing sport on the day too. I think exactly as you said, there could be something like, why not use this as an opportunity to work with festivals and then maybe just earmark one event that is Anzac Day specific, and it's respectful in the way it operates and sets up and prevents itself. But they're alluding to, and the AMA said this ongoing war on festivals for New South Wales must come to an end. And they're labelling it as such, and I can understand why they would feel aggrieved about it. Why not use this as an opportunity rather than just booting them to go, hey, here's something we can work on. But I mean, more broadly, like we need to just stop drinking so much on this day. And I think you could do both of those things, both at the sport. I'm not saying ban alcohol, but if we could, I feel like energy would be better directed into a campaign that came about every year that said, let's not use this as an opportunity to just get shit-faced, because that's what this day seems to have kind of devolved into. And there is having fun and enjoying life and being merry and all of that kind of stuff. But, you don't know, is that what was fought for? Your ability to go and just get absolutely blasted and be vomiting in a gutter on the day that you're meant to be commemorating those people who gave their lives for our country. And I think you could do it all. You could involve sport, you could involve music, and you could drink less all at once.
And not to mention the whole gambling aspect with 2UP as well,
yes,
being legalised only on Anzac Day, but illegal every other day of the year, which feels like, well, if you can only do something one day out of the entire year, is there a reason to continue doing it if you can't do it any other time, if you know what I mean? Like, my understanding is that it was obviously a game that was played by Anzacs during the war, which is why it still holds a bit of a special place. But the way that, we come back to the culture, and we're talking about, how music and sport can sort of add to a culture, the way that we're moving with gambling these days is the complete opposite to that. And the drinking culture in Australia, it's always been part of it, but as you mentioned, it's just an excuse, just like any other public holiday, to drink as much as you want because you've got the day off and, it doesn't really matter. But I know we sort of started this little segment about how Anzac Day is losing so much. Like, I remember growing up as a kid, Mum and Dad would have the march on the telly. We'd wake up early, watch the sunrise, pay the respects, and sort of the morning would be that. Like you'd sort of get up early, you'd sort of, you'd be a bit tired, so you're not wanting to do too much. But even as a kid, I knew that, I couldn't just run around and kick a ball or, do whatever I wanted. I sort of had to be a little bit more respectful. The march was on, and then sort of when we got into the afternoon, the footy would come on. And I remember that as a kid, like that was sort of ANZAC Day. I'm not saying everyone has the same experience, but none of that seems to be the norm these days, like the way that we're moving away from some of the respect around it.
Yeah. And this in particular, it just feels like we both broadly agree that we need to do more to make the day more respectful. But the way that it occurred feels, I don't know, it feels culture war-ish. It feels like it's kind of, trying to elicit a response from a certain sector of people and another response from another certain sector of people. When as I said, I feel like we could direct our energy a whole lot better into a campaign that kind of was like, hey, let's restore the respect for this day. Let's kind of change the culture of the day in terms of how we approach it. Because, yeah, it's not kind of gone, in my opinion, in the best direction specifically, and there's better ways we could be doing it. But to just have a crack at specifically music events while leaving sporting and the general kind of gambling, drinking culture pretty unaffected, I think is kind of missing the mark.
Yeah, and it should be clear by this point that we're not anti-sport. In fact, Eamon and I both love sport, but we just don't like how there's always a difference between what's allowed in sport and what's allowed in music and the arts.
The two, like in terms of Australian culture and more like the culture of the ANZAC as well, involves sport heavily and involves music as well. But I suppose it's a lopsided way that's kind of commemorated. But yeah, I don't know.
But does it come down to like the ochre Aussie blokey bloke type attitude, and that's how we get the drinking, that's how we get the gambling, we've got the footy, arts and culture? Oh no, forget about that. That's not in the ANZAC spirit. I don't know. Does that come into play at all?
There'd be people who have studied Australian sociology a lot better that would be able to answer that. But it sounds like, yes, that would make some sense. Yeah, it's a tricky one, but I think we could benefit definitely from all of us taking a step back and then saying, okay, what makes culture good? What makes Australian culture beautiful as it is today? I think music would form a massive part of that, as does sport. How do we celebrate both of those? How do we incorporate them into our day of remembrance and do it respectfully? And while we're at it, let's just have a few less beers. And
to your point before about, young people going to the music, crossing with the Anzac Day marches and that, I guess, the cross mingle of society there, that's not necessarily uncommon with sporting events either. Like, to continue making the comparisons, the amount of times if you go to Homebush and you'll have, a footy event at, it's not ANZ Stadium anymore, at a core stadium, and then you've got the Giants playing in the AFL down there as well. You might also have a gig or a couple of concerts on at the same time as well. Like, we're not, we're used to having a cross-pollination of people from different, interests and different walks of life all being together, and that's part of what Australian culture is. So to completely exclude music and the arts from being able to do anything like that, just, it feels unnecessary is basically where I'm landing on this. It feels, why?
Yeah, well, I think it's like that Pandemonium Rock Festival, right? And that's what's kind of seems to have spurred this, because there was an issue this year where they needed to step in and relocate the festival in order not to have any dramas between that and the march. Like, fair enough.
Were there dramas, or were they just as a precaution wanting to move it?
It was precaution, and I think from what I gather, it was, like, this is what I mean with the culture war stuff. I mean, there is real concerns, and that's not to discount the concerns that genuine veterans have, but other certain shock jocks would latch onto something like this to stir up some rage in the community and get people calling into their station.
That doesn't sound like talk back.
No. And then all of a sudden it's a massive issue when perhaps it could have been dealt with differently. But either way it was dealt with, and I don't think anything bad occurred. And now it's like that memory. Whereas how many massive brawls have occurred at, Anzac Day footy clashes, and they haven't been like, okay, let's ban the footy, because obviously there is a greater cultural significance of the game, and there's other ways to deal with violence in sport that don't involve banning it entirely. Whereas the response with music, whether it's followed through on or not, has been a very clear threat that no music will be able to take place as well. So it's again just pointing out that difference in response.
Yeah, which is what the main part of that story was. Feels like maybe we got a little bit lost or sidetracked in certain parts of it, but as is typical for us. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it feels like we've been here before. We've had these conversations.
We never left here.
No, but there were almost promises of difference under the Minns government, which is also part of, I think, my frustration around this, is that you got elected, he put in significant funding toward music and the arts, it was making a real push, and then he's done this.
It's just reactionary stuff, and this is what I'm kind of getting at broadly, is that we're putting so much in, and even we're probably playing right into it by discussing it, but with so much energy goes into this when like we could be directing it into a campaign, as said, that I'm sure everyone would agree on. That's like, let's make the day more respectful. Let's get back to what it was about, which is commemoration. Like solemn commemoration, respect, and enjoying what was fought for, and that doesn't involve getting smashed or getting absolutely ridiculous at a pub or gambling $2,000 in a day. That's not what it's about, and that seems to be kind of a lot of the focus, at least amongst our age group, for this time of year. But instead, we're bogged down in this weird discussion about music events on the day, and that's where the government put their energy into, and that's where the whole controversy is whipped up amongst the shock jocks, etc. When this could be getting the public in and having a chat and making everyone really think about and reflect on what they do on the day and what that represents.
Yeah. So as you can tell, we've got a lot of thoughts and not many coherent thoughts on it, but we do have a lot of thoughts. If you also have a thought, let us know on Instagram at Homebrewed Media. Or if you're listening on Spotify, you might get a Q&A or something at the end, or somewhere on your device about a Q&A response thing. Maybe send something through there if it's working. I don't know. I just know it's something that Spotify are doing. Actually, quickly, if you're interested, but if you listen to your podcast on Spotify, apologies to the Apple users. This is completely irrelevant to you now. But if you do listen to your podcast on Spotify, apparently Spotify adding like a comment section, not just like a reply like they have at the moment, like a proper comment section on Spotify podcasts.
That's scary, but interesting.
It's all to be approved by the podcast host. So like we can go on and approve or disapprove comments and publish. Okay. So any comment out there that says we're the best, that's all you're going to see, because that's all we're approving.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, only positive.
These guys waffle on too much and they don't know what they're talking about. Those ones, we never get them anyway, because you will never be able to see them.
Yeah, and we've never ever received any of that feedback whatsoever. So,
not as a comment, only directly verbally to our faces by my father. But anyway.
But yes, that's the stories of the week. Hopefully that those who listened through the initial more industry chat enjoyed the dessert at the end, or maybe you're just feeling sick now. Who knows? Maybe you ate too much pie.
Yeah, I don't think it's like you're sick from it being too sweet or too rich. I think you're just sick because it wasn't cooked properly and you're regretting ever desiring it in the first place.
Too late, pal. You've eaten it.
Yes. You've clicked on the podcast and now we're at the end. So ta-ta, farewell, I guess.
We'll see you soon.
This episode of Homebrewed was produced by my good friend Eamonn Snow. It was recorded on Darkingjung country. For more from us, head to www.homebrewed.au. And until next time.
Ta-ta and farewell.